All right, fuckers. Well, I'm back for the last time of the regular season. It's crazy to think that we've made it through 15 weeks, 13 episodes. Feels like just yesterday I was here making this shit with no video. Then we went through the whole skits phase. Then we started doing interviews. Really feels like this podcast has grown a lot this year. Just like I feel like the league has. And in this episode, we're going to go over some top stats, some interesting figures about all of you guys and the best performances and worst performances throughout the 2022 season. So, Gridiron Legends, suit up for one last ride, and let's carry into the playoffs.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Alright, as we come to an end in 2022, I thought it might be interesting to go over some stats and some figures about the best and worst performances throughout the year. Without further ado, I thought I'd start off with something pretty basic. The highest team total for points scored over the 14 weeks. That goes to Raul with a total of 1590. The best individual team performance in 1 week was Hristo with a 174.5. That was actually the second highest score in an individual week by one player in the whole league's history. The highest score in league's history was in 2022. Eric's team in week 2 scored 196.4. Next up, the league's worst individual week score by one player, meaning all the combined players on his team in 1 week's performance. Vaughn in week 6, gotta give it up. The whole team put up 54.8, which actually segues perfectly into our next trophy for the best individual player performance in 1 week. Joe Mixon in week 9 scored 53.1. So Joe Mixon by himself in 1 week scored as much as Vaughn's entire team, minus 1 point. And actually, Vaughn wins another award with that performance. Unsurprisingly, that performance was in the highest snooze fest matchup in the entire season. He played versus Edwin that week, who scored 89 to 54, made a total point score of 143 in between their whole matchup. Now, I look back, there was 4 times this season where one team outscored that matchup total on their own. 4 times. It is interesting, however, because that poopy performance by Vaughn wasn't the biggest clapping of the season. That honor goes to Edwin, who got almightily clapped by Raul with a finishing score of 150 to 71. Now, the closest game in the season, I think we all know what it was, because it just happened on Monday night. I'll talk about that one a little bit more later. But the interesting part about that one was, although this week 14 matchup with Edwin and Chef was within 0.08 of a finishing point, Chef is actually in the second closest matchup of the entire season as well. In week 2, the finishing score was 128.1 to 129.1. So Chef lost that one by 1 point. Next up, in terms of most clappings given and taken, Hristo gets the Red Cheeks Award because he got clapped 5 times. Now, for most clappings, me, Chef, and Donnie are tied because we each gave out 3 clappings this season. Now, I went ahead and made this handy dandy little chart to illustrate everybody's ratio of clappings given and taken. You'll see in the section all the way to the right are players who only gave clappings. In the middle are players who took and also gave clappings. And on the left are players who enjoyed receiving clappings way more than they gave them out. Next up, doing it for one last time this season. Shout it out to the Dub Club. Hristo, Greg, Donnie, Eric, and me. To round out the season, going out with one last hurrah, is Greg defeating Henson with a healthy clapping, 121-81, to show that he's not a force to be fucked with in the postseason consolation bracket. Donnie also dealt a clapping to Vaughn in the last week of the season. Final score 135-96. Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, Bam Knight, and the Chiefs' defense all came through with big performances. J.K. Dobbins, Justin Jefferson, and Justin Herbert, although they did do well, weren't enough to pull off the victory. In the second closest game of the week, Battle of Raider fans, Eric was able to sneak by Raul with the victory of 124-117, although Christian McCaffrey carried a big load on his back along with Tyreek Hill, 29 points and 20 points respectively. It wasn't enough because Miles Sanders had something to say with 29 points of his own, as well as Jared Goff going off with 32. In my matchup, I was able to defeat Edwin in a way that nobody wants to win, through injury. Kyler Murray, while making a left cut, somehow injured his knee. Looks like he's going to be out for a while. I'm sorry to Edwin, because that's how I ended up winning the last matchup. Best of luck to you in the consolation bracket. And this fucking game. Let me start off by playing a little tune. As you had a bad day, you take it one down, you sing a sad song just to turn it around. Chef, I'm sorry that it had to happen to you, brother, but we got to appreciate the beautiful storybook ending that happened in the final game of the season. On a Monday night, you had the lead, 10.9 points. He had only a kicker. Nick Folk had to come through with 11. We all knew it wasn't impossible, but going into it, we're like, oh, yeah, sure, what if it happens? What if it happens? Second quarter, 50-yard field goal. That's when I knew it was on its way. Kept watching. He made a few more field goals. I think he made one more field goal, 2 extra points, something like that. Just enough to win by less than 1/10 of a point. 1 yard. I was seriously checking my score throughout the night, refreshing my phone, just praying that there wouldn't be a stat correction. And there wasn't. And that will always forever go down as one of the most dramatic storybook endings to a season in our league that will ever happen. Alright, for the last time of the season, the season-ending power rankings. Now, I think these came out pretty accurate to how they are in representing the teams, so I'm pretty proud of how my algorithm works, and I think I'm going to keep using it for next season. First overall is Raul's team, which it makes total sense. The guy has 2 unbelievable wide receivers. He held on to Christian McCaffrey through the trade and came up with one of the best running backs. And he also has Justin Fields at quarterback, who's been performing at a high level ever since the middle of the season. Donnie finishes up at second by hopping 1 point above. He took first overall in the end of the season with the bye week, and I think the second place in the power rankings is pretty representative of his team. And we'll see how they do in the rest of the postseason. Eric finished third overall, which is a great spot for him. I'm at number 4, also moved up by 1 spot. Decently happy with where I'm at. Think I could have done better, but definitely not complaining. A surprising one up next, with Risto finishing 5th. Towards the end of the season, though, he really did start piling up those wins, and I think 5th overall is a deserving spot for Risto. Chef, with that loss in the last game of the season, actually jumped him down 4 spots, which is the reason why the rest of us were able to jump up 1 ahead. I think that this might not be very representative of where he's supposed to be. I think he could have been more in the 4-5-ish range, but the numbers don't lie, and 6 is where he's at. Number 7 is Vaughn. He had a couple little shaky games there, which I think is why he's at number 7. Overall, coming into the season, I think he would have finished higher, but it's pretty representative where he's at, and he has a great shot in the postseason. Henson, number 8, which is pretty good for his first year in the league. I expect that to grow throughout his tenure with our league coming up in the future years. The last 2 spots are pretty interesting as well, with Greg able to squeak by with that big win over Henson last week. Edwin finishing in 10th place in the power rankings after just winning the season last year. Crazy how everything ended up, and I'm excited to see how the postseason goes. So good luck to everybody who's in the playoffs, and good luck to everybody in the consolation bracket. Well, it looks like all good things must come to an end. And I gotta say that really was the best year of fantasy football that I've ever had. Not just because my team did well or whatever, but because of the camaraderie that we were all able to build, the inside jokes that we came up with in the group chat, all the times we were able to hang out, have some drinks together, build some stories, and create some memories. This really was a unique experience, and I super look forward into next year. I wish everybody the best of luck, not just in the playoffs and in this postseason, but in the offseason as well. 2023 is coming up, and I want everybody to achieve their goals, even though we may not have set them yet. I wish the best of luck in whatever you set your mind to next year. Work hard, keep your head down, and grind all throughout the spring and the summer, and I'll catch all you guys next season in the Fantasy Freestyle Podcast.
1